Am I a jerk for not hating my dad's new wife? I'm Luke. I'm 25 years old. My parents have been divorced since I was 5. My mother discovered that my father had a lover, Anna, and on top of that, he had a daughter with her, Moni. After the divorce, my father married Anna, and they had 2 more children, Harry and Susan. Moni is now 22, Harry 20, and Susan 19. Even after all that, my relationship with my father never changed. I always loved him, and he always loved me. We remained close. I also always had a good relationship with my siblings, because none of this was their fault. I never liked Anna, but I respected her to keep things peaceful. Nowadays, my father broke up with Anna, and shortly after, he started a relationship with Mary, who is 2 years older than me and 21 years younger than him. I haven't seen Anna since she and my father split. I only hear about her because my siblings tell me how devastated she is, and things got worse when Mary announced she was pregnant. All my siblings were outraged. They don't want to cut ties with our father, but they have decided they want nothing to do with this child. None of them attended my father's gender reveal party, where it was announced that he would have another boy. I went because if my father's betrayal of my mother didn't affect me, why would his supposed betrayal of my ex-stepmother? My siblings, however, think differently. They believe I owe some loyalty to their mother. They are quite upset that I have a good relationship with my father's new girlfriend and that I have accepted this baby so easily. To them, it feels like I have betrayed them, but I don't want to get involved in a fight that isn't my fault. I have stayed out of it as much as I can, but tensions have been rising. Moni has stopped replying to my messages, and Harry and Susan have made it clear that they would rather not see me for a while. It's a difficult situation because I never imagined our relationship would break over something like this. I have tried to talk to them to make them understand that my stance is not a betrayal, but a way of moving forward without holding on to resentment. However, their responses are cold and distant. As the baby's birth approaches, my father seems happier than ever. He has asked me to be the godfather, something that truly honors me, but also complicates my situation with my siblings. Accepting could mean the definitive end of my relationship with them, but rejecting it could hurt my father. It's a decision that is eating me up inside. In one of the few conversations I've had with Moni recently, she told me that she just doesn't understand how I can continue as if nothing happened. That for her, this is not just a matter of loyalty, but of dignity. Dad has never realized the damage he causes, and you keep supporting him. It's like you're ignoring everything we've been through. Her words hurt me more than I expected, because deep down, a part of me fears she might be right. I try to focus on my own life, my projects, and my friendships, but the tension with my family weighs on my shoulders. As the birth approaches, I wonder if my siblings will reconsider their stance or if this fracture will be permanent. What I do know is that any decision I make will change our lives forever. My father's baby was getting closer to being born, and with it, the distance with my siblings became more evident. They didn't text me, didn't reply to my messages, and when I tried calling, the conversations were brief and cold. It hurt to lose them this way, but I didn't know what else to do. Trying to convince them that my stance wasn't a betrayal seemed futile, so I stopped insisting. One day, my father called me to invite me to dinner at his house. He said he wanted to talk to me about something important. I accepted without hesitation, though I was curious about what could be so urgent. When I arrived, Mary greeted me with a kind smile, her belly already prominent. I wondered if the baby could already feel the tension in the family before even being born. During dinner, my father waited until dessert to bring up the topic. "Luke, I want to ask you for a favor," he said in a calm but firm tone. "I want you to be at the hospital when the baby is born." I was a bit surprised, but nodded. "Of course, Dad, you can count on me. And I also want you to hold him before anyone else. I want you to be the first person to hold him in your arms after me and Mary." The weight of that request fell on me like a stone. I knew what it meant. It was a declaration of trust, a gesture of love, but also something that could drive me even further away from my siblings. I hesitated for a moment. "Dad, that could cause problems with Moni, Harry, and Susan." My father sighed and lowered his gaze. I know, son, but I want this child to have something the others didn't. I want him to have unity from the very beginning, even if the others aren't willing to give it to him. I remained silent. Was it fair to my siblings? Or was it fair to the baby who, through no fault of his own, would be born surrounded by resentment and division? There were no easy answers. Days passed, and the tension in the family only kept growing. Suddenly, I received a message from Moni. I was surprised to see her name on my screen after weeks of silence. We need to talk. I felt a knot in my stomach. I didn't know if this was an opportunity to reconcile or an inevitable confrontation. We met at a cafe downtown, a place where we used to go with our father as kids. Ironically, the nostalgia only highlighted the distance between us now. Moni looked serious, her arms crossed over the table. "Luke, I want to know something," she said bluntly. "Why do you support him? Why can't you see what he did to us?" I took a deep breath before answering. "I do see it, Moni. I'm not blind or naive, but I can't live anchored in the past. I know Dad isn't perfect. I know he's made mistakes, but I also know he never stopped loving us. I don't want to lose him, and I don't want to lose you either." She lowered her gaze, but her expression remained hard. "You're losing us, Luke. You're not giving us the right, but you're giving it to him. It's not about giving anyone the right, Moni. It's about choosing how I want to live my life." Moni let out a sigh. "Then you've already made your decision." "Yes," I replied firmly, "and I hope that one day you can understand it." A long silence settled between us, heavier than all the words spoken. Finally, she stood up, grabbed her bag, and looked at me one last time before walking away. "Take care, Luke." I watched her leave, feeling something break inside me. Maybe it wasn't a final goodbye, but it was undoubtedly a turning point. And as Moni disappeared into the crowd, I knew things would never be the same again. Days passed, and although I tried to keep myself busy with work and other activities, the conversation with Moni kept replaying in my mind. I knew she had been sincere in her stance, but I also knew that I couldn't back down from mine. I didn't want to lose my siblings, but I also didn't want to be dragged down by the resentment they felt. My father's baby was getting closer to being born, and as the due date approached, the tension in the family grew. I knew my father was excited about the arrival of his new child, and that he wanted me there to share that moment with him. But I also knew that my presence could be interpreted by my siblings as a declaration of absolute loyalty to him, a betrayal of what they believed was right. One afternoon, while I was coming home from work, I received a message from Harry. I was surprised because it had been a long time since we last had any contact. "Can we talk?" he wrote. My heart started racing. I didn't know if this was a chance to make amends or the start of another big argument. Even so, I replied immediately. "Of course, tell me where and when." We met at a park not far from where we used to play as kids. When I arrived, I saw him sitting on a bench, looking at his phone with a furrowed brow. I sat beside him, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Finally, Harry broke the silence. "I don't want to think that everything is lost," he said without looking at me, "but I have a hard time understanding you, Luke. I have a hard time understanding how you can be okay with all of this." I sighed, trying to find the right words. "It's not that I'm okay with it, Harry. It's that I don't want to carry resentment that isn't mine. I want to move forward." He clenched his jaw. "And do you think we don't want to move forward?" "I don't know," I admitted. "What I do know is that moving forward doesn't mean the same thing for everyone." Another silence settled between us. Harry fiddled with a small rock on the ground before speaking again. "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Dad deserves to have you there when his child is born." His bluntness caught me off guard. "Why?" He looked at me with a mix of anger and sadness. "Because he wasn't there for us when he should have been. And now you're giving him something he never gave us." His words hurt because, deep down, there was some truth in them. Our father had made mistakes. He had hurt a lot of people. But it was also true that I couldn't change the past. "This isn't about choosing between you or him," I said calmly. "It's about the fact that I don't want to lose either of you." Harry sighed, rested his elbows on his knees, and looked up at the sky. "I get it, but I can't accept that right now." I didn't push him. I didn't want to pressure him. I simply nodded and let the silence surround us once again. A couple of days later, the situation took an unexpected turn. I got a call in the middle of the night. It was my father. His voice sounded agitated. "Luke, Mary is in the hospital. The baby is on the way." I jumped out of bed, got dressed quickly, and rushed to the hospital. The ride felt endless, and my mind couldn't stop thinking about what this moment meant. When I arrived, my father was outside the delivery room, pacing back and forth. He saw me and quickly walked over. "Thank you for coming," he said, and although he tried to keep his composure, I could tell he was nervous. "How is Mary?" I asked. "She's fine. She's in labor, but the doctors say everything is under control." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. The wait was long, and during that time, I received a message from Susan. "I heard she's in the hospital. I'm not ready to see Dad, but let me know if everything goes well." It was the first sign of a possible reconciliation in a long time, and even though it was small, I appreciated it. I replied with a simple, "I'll let you know." Hours passed, and finally, the doctor came out to give us the news. "Congratulations! A healthy and strong baby boy has been born." My father let out a sigh of relief and hugged me tightly. "Thank you for being here, son." At that moment, I knew I had made my decision. I didn't know if my siblings would ever be able to accept it, but I was sure that I wanted to be part of this child's life. How easy or difficult that would be, only time would tell. The news of the baby's birth quickly spread through the family. Even though I knew my siblings weren't ready to accept it, I sent a group message with a picture of the little one and a simple note, "He was born healthy and strong. Just wanted you to know." I didn't expect immediate replies, but despite that, I kept an eye on my phone. My father couldn't hide his joy. Seeing him hold his son with such tenderness and pride reminded me of the past, of when I was the child he carried in his arms. There was something ironic about all of this. Despite his mistakes, he was still a devoted father to his children, no matter the generation. As Mary rested, my father and I sat in the hospital waiting room. The atmosphere was calm, but I could tell he had something to say. Finally, he broke the silence. "Son, I know this hasn't been easy for you." "I know, Dad," I responded, not wanting to dwell on it. He paused and then lowered his voice. "Your siblings. Do you think they'll ever understand?" I thought about it. I didn't have a clear answer, and lying to him wouldn't help. "I don't know, Dad. I think they need time." My father nodded, but his eyes reflected a certain sadness. I knew he wanted to bring us all together again, but he also understood that my siblings' resentment wouldn't disappear overnight. A few days later, I received an unexpected message from Susan. It was brief, but meaningful. "Can we meet?" I couldn't deny that I was surprised, but I accepted immediately. We met at a cafe we used to go to when we were younger. When I arrived, she was already there, stirring her drink with a spoon without looking at me. I sat across from her, waiting for her to speak first. "I saw the picture," she finally said. "It's weird." "I get it," I replied. "I don't expect you to suddenly accept everything. I just wanted you to know he arrived safely." Susan sighed. "Moni is still upset. Harry too. But I don't know, Luke. I don't want to be fighting with you, but I feel like if I support you, it'd be betraying her." "Susan, you don't have to choose between us." "This isn't a war," I said calmly. "You're our sister, and even if Moni is upset right now, she still loves you." She nodded, but still seemed undecided. "I just need time," she murmured. "Take it," I assured her. "I'm not here to pressure you." We stayed in silence for a few moments, but for the first time in a long while, it was a comfortable silence. Weeks passed, and although my relationship with Susan seemed to be improving, things remained the same with Moni and Harry. They didn't answer my messages, and when I tried calling them, they simply wouldn't pick up. I knew I couldn't force anything, but the frustration lingered. Meanwhile, my father kept asking me to spend more time with his new son. I felt comfortable doing so, but I also had a constant fear that my siblings would see this as a confirmation of their biggest fear, that I had chosen a side. One afternoon, while holding the baby in my arms, I wondered how he would feel in the future when he learned everything that had happened before his birth. Would he grow up feeling like he was to blame for the separation between his siblings? Would he be able to find his place in this fractured family? My phone vibrated, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Moni. Just 2 words, "We need to talk." My heart raced. I didn't know if this was a good or bad sign, but the only thing I could do was respond, "Tell me where and when." Mona's message left me with an uneasy feeling. For days, I had been trying to reach out to her without success, and now, out of nowhere, she wanted to talk. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't going to turn down the opportunity. We arranged to meet at a nearby cafe, the same place where I had met with Susan weeks before. When I arrived, Moni was already there, arms crossed, staring at the cup of coffee in front of her. I sat down carefully, waiting for her to take the lead. Finally, she looked up and let out a heavy sigh. "Luke, I don't understand how you can be so calm about all of this," she blurted out. "I'm not calm, Moni," I replied evenly. "I just don't want to live in a constant state of anger." She shook her head. "You've always been like this. You always find a way to justify everything." "I'm not justifying it. I'm just trying to move forward." The silence that followed was thick. Moni stirred her coffee without taking a sip. Finally, she leaned toward me. "I can't accept this," she said in a low voice. "For me, Dad has crossed a line that can't be undone. And seeing you so involved with his new family hurts me more than I can explain." I swallowed hard. "It's not my intention to hurt you. I'm still your brother." "I know," she murmured, "but I don't know if I'm still your sister." Her words hit me hard. I wanted to say something to convince her that it wasn't true, but she stood up before I could. "I just wanted to tell you how I feel," she said. "I don't want to keep arguing." I stayed there, staring at her abandoned coffee cup. Something had broken, and I wasn't sure if I could fix it. The following weeks felt strange. Susan tried to stay in touch with me, but her tone was always tense. Harry, on the other hand, remained completely silent. My father, busy with his new child, either didn't notice the conflict or preferred to ignore it. And I felt trapped between 2 worlds. One day, while visiting my father and Mary, she pulled me aside. "Luke, I know this is difficult for you," she said gently. "I just want you to know that we really appreciate you being here." I gave her a small smile. "Thanks, Mary, but honestly, I don't know how well I'm handling all of this." She sighed. "No one really knows how to handle these things. We just do the best we can." Her words stuck with me. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was no perfect solution. A couple of days later, I received a message from Harry. It was short and direct. "I need to talk to you, tomorrow at the park." I didn't know if this was a good or bad sign, but I knew I couldn't avoid it. The next chapter of this conflict was about to unfold, and all I could do was wait and see how it played out. The next day, I arrived at the park before Harry. I sat on a bench, watching people pass by, trying to organize my thoughts. I knew this conversation could mark a turning point in our relationship. After everything that had happened, the distance between us had only grown. Soon, I saw Harry approaching with a slow, deliberate pace. He sat beside me without saying a word for a moment, simply staring into the distance. Then, he let out a sigh. "I don't know where to start," he admitted. "Start with how you feel," I suggested. "I'm angry," he said bluntly. "Not just at Dad, but at you too, because I feel like, in some way, you chose him over us." His words hurt, but I expected them. This isn't about choosing, Harry. It's about moving forward without being trapped in resentment. I don't want to live with hatred. He shook his head. "Maybe you can do that, but it's not that easy for me. Dad left us behind once. I can't just pretend that none of that matters because he has another child now." "I'm not asking you to forget," I clarified, "just to try to understand why I chose not to carry that bitterness." Silence stretched between us. Harry picked up a small rock from the ground and tossed it into the grass. Finally, he exhaled in frustration. "I can't promise you that it'll change my mind anytime soon," he admitted, "but I don't want to lose you. You're my brother, and even though I don't understand how you're okay with all of this, I also don't want this to separate us forever." I felt an unexpected sense of relief. "We don't need to agree on everything, Harry. We just need to keep the door open." He nodded, though his expression remained serious. "I can't say the same for Moni. She's still really hurt. Susan, I think she's somewhere in between, but at least I want to try. We sat in silence for a while, just like when we were kids, spending afternoons together in that same park. Maybe things would never be the same, but at least there was a chance to heal. Days later, Susan sent me a message asking if we could meet. We met at a cafe, and although she seemed more relaxed than Moni or Harry, there was still tension in her voice. "I want to be honest with you, Luke," she said. "I don't think he'll ever fully accept what Dad did, but I also don't want to keep living in this war that's tearing us apart. I care about our relationship, and even though Moni and Harry are still hurt, I want at least you and me to be okay." I nodded. "That's all I want. We don't have to agree, we just have to stay as siblings." She gave a small smile. "Then let's try." Over time, my relationship with Susan and Harry improved. There was no magical reconciliation, but at least there was an effort to maintain the bond that connected us. Moni, however, remained distant. I tried reaching out to her several times, but I never got a clear response. Maybe, with time, she would change her mind. Or maybe she wouldn't. The birth of the baby brought irreversible changes to our family dynamic. It wouldn't be easy to repair all the cracks that had formed, but at least there was no longer an unbreakable wall between us. Despite our differences, the love that bound us as siblings was still there, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. And with that, I finally found a bit of peace.